For decades, the Gulf's order was simple: oil for security, with the US as the dominant partner. The region's vast energy reserves fueled the world's economies, and in return, American military might guarantee the safety of these vital resources. This arrangement shaped not just the Gulf, but the very architecture of global power. The US provided military protection and global financial clout, while Gulf monarchies kept oil flowing, always in dollars. This petrodollar system cemented America's influence, tying the fate of global markets to the stability of the Gulf and the strength of the US dollar. This arrangement made Washington the region's power broker, with allies like Saudi Arabia and Qatar closely aligned. Diplomatic ties ran deep, and security cooperation was the backbone of the relationship, ensuring a steady flow of oil and a predictable balance of power. But by 2025, the world has changed. The rise of China and other powers is shaking up this old alliance. New economic corridors are emerging, and the Gulf is no longer content to play a supporting role in a US-led order. Gulf states are now asserting strategic autonomy, forging new ties, especially with the BRICS bloc. They are actively seeking partnerships that reflect their growing ambitions and desire for a more balanced global influence. Saudi Arabia and Qatar joining BRICS signals a major recalibration, quietly challenging US dominance. This move is more than symbolic. It's a statement that the Gulf is ready to shape its own destiny, aligning with emerging powers to diversify its alliances. Leaders like Mohammed bin Salman and Sheikh Tamim are diversifying their economies, seeking new partners for trade and technology. They are investing in innovation, infrastructure, and education, aiming to transform their nations into global hubs for business and technology. BRICS offers vast markets and capital, free from Western political strings. For the Gulf, this means access to new sources of investment and technology, and the freedom to chart a more independent course in global affairs. As Gulf states conduct more business outside the dollar, America's economic leverage erodes. The shift to non-dollar currencies in trade and investment is gradually reducing the US grip on global finance, opening the door to a more pluralistic economic landscape. This is a deliberate evolution, not a sudden break, ushering in a more multipolar, unpredictable world. The Gulf's new strategy is calculated, aiming to balance old alliances with new opportunities, and to secure its place in a rapidly changing global order. Understanding this shift is key to grasping the new global order taking shape. As the sands of power continue to shift, the choices made in the Gulf will echo far beyond its borders, shaping the future of international relations for years to come. BRICS began as an investment term, grouping Brazil, Russia, India, and China, later joined by South Africa. Initially, it was more concept than coalition, with diverse interests and little coordination. But BRICS has evolved, building its own financial institutions like the New Development Bank, offering alternatives to Western-dominated lenders. Its expansion to include Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others has boosted its economic and geopolitical weight. The bloc now represents nearly half the world's population, and a massive share of global resources. For Gulf states, joining BRICS is a strategic move, diversifying alliances, gaining leverage, and exploring alternatives to the dollar. It's a pragmatic step in a world where power is spreading beyond the West. The Gulf's pivot east is driven by economic reality. Asia is now its biggest energy customer. China is Saudi Arabia's top trading partner, naturally shifting diplomatic focus eastward. US policy swings and reduced military commitments have made Gulf leaders question American reliability. China's approach, focused on trade and infrastructure, not political conditions, appeals to Gulf monarchies. BRICS membership aligns with their ambitions to become global hubs for finance and technology. Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia and similar plans in Qatar require diverse partners and capital. The BRICS bloc, with its dynamic markets, is essential for these transformation projects. The Gulf is no longer just an oil supplier, it's aiming to be a major global player. De-dollarization refers to the global movement where countries are actively reducing their reliance on the US dollar for international trade, financial reserves, and cross-border transactions. This shift is not just a technical adjustment, it's a response to changing geopolitical realities and a desire for greater economic sovereignty. For decades, the dollar's dominance has given the United States unparalleled economic power, allowing it to influence global markets, set the rules of international finance, and impose sanctions on adversaries with significant impact. But this very leverage is now seen as a vulnerability by many countries, especially emerging powers like the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, who worry about being exposed to US policy shifts and sanctions. China and Russia are at the forefront, forging new trade agreements that use their own currencies instead of the dollar. The BRICS bloc is also exploring the creation of a shared currency or payment system to further reduce dollar dependence. For Gulf oil exporters, pricing energy in a basket of currencies, rather than just the dollar, offers a way to shield themselves from US political pressure and currency fluctuations, while opening up new markets and partnerships. The process is gradual, but the data is clear. The dollar's share in global reserves and international payments is slowly declining. Each non-dollar transaction, no matter how small, chips away at the dollar's once unquestioned dominance. For everyday Americans, this shift could eventually mean higher prices for imported goods, increased inflation, and potentially higher borrowing costs, as the US loses some of its financial privileges. For the Gulf states, however, it represents a chance to gain more independence, flexibility, and influence in the global economy, as they diversify their partnerships and financial strategies. The shift away from the dollar is slow but unmistakable, a fundamental transformation in the architecture of the global financial system, with new alliances and trade routes emerging. Around the world, governments, businesses, and investors are watching closely as the dollar's grip on global finance begins to loosen, raising questions about what the future holds. In this evolving landscape, the Gulf is positioning itself at the heart of the transformation, shaping the next chapter of global finance. The Gulf's economic center has shifted decisively to Asia. Saudi trade with BRICS nations now surpasses that with the US and EU combined. China is the region's top partner, investing in everything from cities to AI. Qatar secures long-term gas deals with China, often in non-dollar currencies. India too is a vital partner, relying on Gulf energy and sending billions in remittances. These ties are deepening, making the Gulf a bridge between Asia and Europe. The pivot east is now a defining feature of the region's future. The US is fighting to retain influence, launching a major counteroffensive. In 2025, a $1 trillion deal with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar tied their development to American technology and the dollar. The centerpiece, a massive AI campus in Abu Dhabi, run by US firms and powered by advanced American chips. These deals extend to defense and manufacturing, all conducted in dollars, a direct challenge to BRICS' de-dollarization push. The US is leveraging its tech and financial strengths, making offers China and Russia can't match. Gulf states aren't choosing sides. They're playing both, seeking the best from East and West. For advanced tech and security, they still turn to Washington. The US and China now compete for influence through economics, not just military might. The Gulf stands skillfully in the middle. Multi-alignment brings opportunity, but also risk. The Gulf could get caught in US-China rivalry, facing pressure to pick a side. American military support remains vital. Saudi forces rely on US hardware and intelligence. Aligning too closely with BRICS, especially with Russia and Iran, risks US sanctions and supply disruptions. Public opinion is mixed. Many Gulf citizens still favor Western ties. BRICS itself is divided. India and China, for example, are rivals. Gulf states risk being drawn into disputes that don't serve their interests. The challenge reap BRICS benefits without its baggage. Navigating this tightrope will define the region's future. The Gulf's path is now one of complexity and opportunity. Once defined by oil wealth and regional rivalries, the Gulf is rapidly transforming into a key player on the world stage. Its leaders are navigating a landscape filled with both challenges and possibilities, seeking to secure their nation's futures in a time of global uncertainty. Joining BRICS isn't rebellion, it's a pragmatic bid for independence in a multipolar world. Gulf states are not turning their backs on the West, but rather expanding their options, forging new alliances, and diversifying their partnerships to ensure resilience in a shifting global order. Gulf states will deepen ties with China and BRICS, using more local currencies and slowly eroding the dollar's dominance. These economic moves are strategic, allowing the Gulf to hedge against volatility and assert greater control over its financial destiny. Yet they'll still rely on the US for security and advanced technology. The American presence remains vital, especially in defense and innovation, creating a delicate balance between old alliances and new ambitions. The contest for influence is now economic and technological, not just military. Gulf nations are investing heavily in digital infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and green energy, aiming to become leaders in the industries of tomorrow. The dollar's future, as the world's currency, is uncertain, with a multipolar system emerging. As new financial centers rise, the Gulf's role in global finance could grow, but so could the volatility and unpredictability of the markets. For the Gulf, this means more influence, but also more risk. Navigating this new era will require agility, vision, and the ability to adapt quickly to global shocks and opportunities. Positioned between East and West, they could become global hubs for trade and innovation. Their ports, airports, and digital corridors are already connecting continents, and their ambitions reach far beyond oil. Their choices in the coming years will shape not just their destiny, but the new world order. Every agreement, every partnership, and every investment will ripple across the globe, influencing the balance of power for decades to come. The world is watching as the Gulf's shifting sands reflect the tectonic changes in global power. In this era of transformation, the Gulf stands at the crossroads of history, with the potential to redefine its role and the world's future.